Welcome, Maynard, to the Empathy Edge. It has been so long since we have seen each other. I think we discussed it might have been about 12 years ago.
Yeah.
But welcome to the Empathy Edge to talk about all things Hip Hop M.D.
Yes, absolutely. No, thank you so much for having me. It's been a reunion long in the making.
I know, right? Right. And just the hilarious story about how Maynard and I actually know each other for my listeners is that eons ago, well, it must be 12 years ago, we were in an independent student film together in Seattle that kind of still to this day doesn't really make a lot of sense to me, but it was very moody and very artsy and very fun. And it was really great to co-star with you in that.
Yes.
It's not even a romp. I don't even know what it was.
I don't even
it was like an allegory.
It was a very mind-bending, like
time bending.
It's like on some like the sky type crazy stuff.
Yeah, like changing time. And it's so funny that we reconnect through this work around empathy and you being on the show, because empathy is such an important it's such an important tool in an actor's toolkit. And I remember on that set, I did not have children at the time, and I had to play a woman who was struggling with the loss of her child.
Mm-hmm.
And I had no idea what that felt like. And so in order to recreate that emotion, which sounds ridiculous now that I have an 8-year-old, is I thought about my dog, because my dog was my child. And I read these really sad poems about people losing their pet right before we shot those scenes where I had to be crying about my lost son. And it helped me kind of channel what that feeling of loss and grief would feel like for someone or something that you hold so dear. But now I am a mom and now I get it. And I'm like, oh, Maria, you were so off mark. But anyway,
that's very fitting, because as an actor, you have to find different sources of inspiration, and you only can do what you can research and what you can find. And so I think that's a perfect analogy, because think about it, I have a dog right now. I don't have any kids yet, but I have a dog, and I know the feeling if I lost my dog right now, how devastating that would be.
Heartbreaking. Yeah.
So anything that you love, it doesn't have to be an actual child, but anything that you show deep affection and love for, like to be able to pull that emotion out, you got to find whatever source you can that will bring that out of you.
Exactly. So I want to talk about your amazing work as the Hip Hop MD, helping kids love science, helping them love math and technology. And tell us a little bit about that work and what brought you to that work.
Yeah, so it's kind of crazy, and it actually ties into what we did when we first met, kind of browsing into the acting world. So I have a background in civil engineering from the University of Washington. And so I'm fully STEM educated, STEM science background. Always
fully
been
STEM certified.
Nerd. Yeah. Always been a science nerd at heart. But at the same time, I've always been a creative at heart. I've always been into entertainment. Music and acting were two big passions of mine. And so even while I was going to school and pursuing my degree, I was still fully involved in music work at the time. And then later on, after I got my degree, really diving into acting work. And so at the time that we met, that was actually one of my first acting projects. I think maybe it had been like my second or so like acting project. I'd done like a stage theater project before that. But I was always finding different outlets to be able to express my creative side. I know I loved being in front of camera, and I knew I loved bringing stories to life. And my best tools for me to do that were on film and through music. And so I was kind of in this weird bind where I really wanted to invest more time in my creative elements, but work was taking up so much of my time. And obviously I was focused on my career at that time, starting my career, starting to make money and everything. But then it came to a kind of boiling point shortly after we did that project. I had a couple more projects that I did shortly after. And I was like, this is where I need to be. This is where I fully need to really be able to invest my creative elements into. And so I ended up resigning from my job and moved out to LA to pursue the whole Hollywood dream of music and acting opportunities. And so I left everything engineering behind and got fully invested into the arts out here in LA. And then everything kind of came full circle as I was doing a lot of acting projects. I started getting more short films and feature films under my belt, doing music projects as well. But I never lost sight of being able to stay connected in the science world. And at that time, I noticed like there just wasn't an interest in a lot of science fields. I was always that nerd that would always bring up random science topics in discussions that probably inappropriate times that people are like, why do you know this? Right? And I just noticed people around me just weren't that crazy about a lot of science topics and new things happening in the science world and everything. And I really wanted to find a way to be able to bring that energy and that love that I shared for science to communities, especially communities of color, people that look like me, that just weren't invested in a lot of new technology and a lot of new things that are happening. And so that's how the whole hip hop science platform came to be. It was a way for me to use music, entertainment, and comedy to educate on different science topics. And so it really started out as a sketch idea. I just played this Hip Hop M.D character, and I was shooting these comedic sketches about me, presenting random science topics in inappropriate situations.
Yeah.
And it eventually ended up snowballing. I started doing YouTube videos. And before I knew it, it's turned into this whole STEM education outreach platform where people were really learning a lot of new topics around science, around education, around STEM subjects. And I was using things that I was passionate about, which was music and entertainment, and now connecting my whole science side. So it was really me in a full nutshell. So it came about in a really roundabout perspective. And now I'm fully embraced into this science communication realm. And, the Hip Hop Science platform has been taking off and really connecting with a lot of communities from K through 12 to college students, to work with corporations and different brand partnerships. So it's definitely been an exciting couple of years just seeing this turn into something really positive and inspirational for others.
I love it so much because you've managed to weave together. What I tell my brand clients is that you've weaved together your personal interests with the work you're called to do in the world, and you've found a way to make it uniquely your own. So I want to speak about this because the reason I spoke to you, that I wanted to have you on, was this idea that you are sparking curiosity with youth. And I think that is something that many businesses are trying to do, brands are trying to do, parents are trying to do, teachers are trying to do. And to me, it's so obvious that it's rooted in empathy, because it's about conveying a message in the way that your audience will best receive it. Not necessarily, I mean, for you, it is the way you love to communicate it.
Yeah.
You've kind of thought through about what's going to be of interest to them, what's going to spark their curiosity, what questions might they have. Can you talk a little bit about if that, did you realize that that was intentionally empathetic, or does that just come naturally to you?
Yeah. I don't think there was an intentional element behind it. It really stemmed from me wanting to do something in a way that I didn't feel I had the privilege of having when I was in that position. So I always look back at my stories, especially me growing up. I was just always naturally a science nerd. I was always just kind of connected in that space, but I didn't have a lot of educators around me that brought that same passion. I didn't have any mentors around me. My parents weren't in any STEM field, and STEM educated as well. And so it was really just me trying to go after and pursuing what I love doing, and really naturally finding my own curiosity and asking questions and stepping outside of the box and being willing to challenge myself. And I noticed that was happening into a lot of other students as well, too. I had stories of just my peers and then other people coming below me that never felt that they had teachers that really showcased a love for anything education, right? That literally would walk into the classroom and just go through the motions, right? Hand out paperwork, tell them that these are assignments that need to be done.
Teach to the test.
Yes, exactly. But never brought a passion for education, shared that love. And I always think about, if I had that type of energy instilled in me at an early age,
oh my gosh,
the opportunities that could unfold, right?
I mean, look what you did without it. Yeah. So can you imagine? And not just for you, but imagine how many yous are out there that didn't do that because they didn't have that exposure. And that, when we talk about representation and we talk about giving people role models, this is why that's so important, because if kids can't see it, they can't be it. And that sounds so trite, but it's true.
Yep, absolutely. And I've had opportunities to chat with many educators in this space and talking to their students. I had an educator that's become a good friend of mine. We actually knew each other from college, but then later on, as I was doing this platform and doing interviews with her, became a lot more connected, because I was actually able to understand her plight more as an educator doing the work that I'm doing. And she had situations where she'd talk about students that she had, that she'd come into a classroom, new to the classroom, right, with students that had been there for a while, and then the students telling her that it wasn't that they weren't interested in the subject, it was that they were always told that they weren't smart enough. They were always told that they wouldn't be able to understand this. and it didn't communicate, and teachers didn't communicate it in a way that
Right.
was friendly to them or exciting or fun. And so they always looked at it as work, right? They
Mm-hmm.
always looked at it as, oh, this is the teacher's test that they're handing to me and not my test, and not me being in control of my education
Right.
and the things I want to learn. And when you make
Right.
it more of an inclusive environment, and
Mm-hmm.
you are able to implore to the kids that, hey, this is something that is great for you. This is where the doors are going to open for you. These
Mm-hmm.
opportunities are going to open for you. And this is why this is important. And this is
Mm-hmm.
how it applies to your everyday life and real things that you do on a
Mm-hmm.
daily basis. Now you're able to make that connection to our
Yeah.
youth. They feel involved, they feel more invested, they feel like this is part of their future, and they're more in control as well. And they can actually have an active participation in their education as well.
Well, and I think that's a powerful lesson for leaders of teams as well. It's not necessarily just children, it's adults that need that too. They need that. They need to own the work that they do. They need to find purpose in it. They need to find the passion in it. And that's the role of leaders. The role of leaders is not just to dole out work and
Mhm.
and assess people. The
Yeah.
role of leaders is to inspire and motivate and provide a vision and unlock what it is for each individual on their team that's going to get the best out of them. And so there's so many lessons, even though, you know, your work is primarily with children. That's why I'm so intrigued. You mentioned that you're working with a lot of companies
Mhm.
and brands. Is it about that? Is it about sparking curiosity and about getting more out of your team? What's the work that you're doing with companies right now?
Yeah, it really ties in. And you brought up something important when you brought up passion and purpose. I have this mantra that I go by, or this quote that I go by: when you find your passion, it becomes your purpose, and you can no longer be passive, right?
Ooh, I love that.
And I think that that bodes well for not only our youth, but it bodes well for us as we continue to get older and face more challenges in life, right? Because a lot of times we may be told what we're supposed to do, especially as a youth, right? We're always kind of driven in a certain direction, like, hey, this is what you're going to be. These are the only
This is your
options.
path. Yeah.
Yeah, and you never really think outside the bubble, right? And sometimes
Mm-hmm.
you get lost, kind of just going through this kind of rabbit hole, and you think that this is the path that you're supposed to go on, and you don't even have that opportunity to think outside the box or investigate other opportunities, right? And so a lot of times we're purposeless, right? We just don't
Mm-hmm.
have a drive for anything. So, like, you know, when you find that drive, when you find that purpose, you know, now you understand exactly what that vision is, and then there's no longer any excuses. There's no longer anything that's deterring you or distracting you. Now you can be so narrowly focused on what it is that you want to accomplish.
Yeah.
And my work with the corporations ties in with a lot of the work that I do is with the youth, right? Because in order for these corporate, especially now in technology, tech is the wave of the future. When
Mm-hmm.
you're going to the STEM fields of the wave of the future, which is why there's such a big push right now for STEM education,
Mm-hmm.
because as we get more new technologies, this is where all the jobs are going to be. This is where the opportunity is going to be. And these are the fields that are changing people's lives, that have socioeconomic impacts, right, on our
Mm-hmm.
day-to-day lives, and have an impact on the future and where everything is going globally. And
Right.
so it's important for youth to have an understanding of these fields, but it's more important for corporations and companies that are going to be hiring these workforces and going to be utilizing these new technologies and innovations that are going to
Mm-hmm.
break this forefront, to be reaching back out to the youth and sparking that curiosity and showcasing to them what opportunities are available. And
Mm-hmm.
especially from a diversity perspective, and that's really the crux of the work that I do when I'm working with corporations, is
Mm-hmm.
talking about, minority inclusion, right? Diversity and inclusion. And that comes with gender inclusion, right? Getting more women involved in STEM,
Mm-hmm.
getting more Black and Brown voices involved in STEM, because we know diversity is where it's at in order to bring new innovations to the table, bring new ideas,
Absolutely.
right? To
Yep.
bring that melting pot. And technology is driven by diversity, right? We
Yeah.
wouldn't have these new technologies and new innovations if we didn't have different ideas being brought to the table, people from different backgrounds, different
Mm-hmm.
cultures having an active involvement in this
Mm-hmm.
technology. And so I do a lot of that work with corporations, talking to them how they can be able to connect with more diverse individuals, how they can reach out to work with
Mm-hmm.
HBCUs, how they can look for more diverse talent, how they can mix up their workforce, right, to get
Mm-hmm.
more involvement from different genders and people from different backgrounds, so
Mm-hmm.
that you don't just have one mantra and one look in your face of your corporation. And especially in leadership positions, really being able to change your leadership force to be more diverse as well too, because if you can't get the leaders in your position changed and have a different perspective and have a different look, then it's harder to now set that pipeline We
Yes.
cannot reach back and be able to bring others up in that environment as well too. So that
Yeah.
whole full gamut is really important from everything because it's cyclical and they all tie into each other. If the corporations don't reach back out to the youth and the youth don't get excited and involved, then they don't eventually come back into those positions that they need to be as well.
What do you think is the biggest barrier that I've talked to many other guests about this, but from the work that you're doing and given what you're seeing in terms of the younger generation, because that's, you work a lot with them. What do you think is the biggest barrier to certain companies? I think some companies do it better than others, but many don't. What is the barrier to them understanding that diversity actually makes their organization stronger? Because all the data shows how diversity and empathy, quite frankly, leads to more innovation. And to your point, about tech, empathy is at the heart of design thinking. That's the way we innovate, is because we're thinking about how people are going to use the technology. What do they need? What are their goals? What are their values? What are they trying to accomplish? That's how tech is created, especially consumer tech, right?
Yeah.
So what have you seen? I guess maybe asked another way, what's the big aha you've been able to give to companies when you go in and talk to them about how to create more diversity, create better pipelines, captivate youth with wanting to be part of their organization, especially if they're a tech organization?
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of twofold, right? Part of it, I believe, is exposure, right? Being able to be involved and invested into these different communities. And it kind of ties in with everything, right? When you talk about diversity, you talk about involvement and you talk about inclusion, if you aren't actively around different people that don't look like you, people that come from different backgrounds, then all your perspective is based around is what you may see.
One perspective. Yeah.
Yeah. Or what you may have been told from other people. Right. And so you don't have a vested interest because you don't have people that you're directly connected with that you can see or hear about their stories and hear about what they've gone through and those experiences.
And see things in another way.
Yeah.
See things in a way that's not actually, we were talking about this before we started recording, that I did another episode in the past with Ilana Ben-Ari, who is the founder of the Empathy Toy. She is the CEO of 21 Toys. And the Empathy Toy is a tool that she uses with teams to help them understand empathy. And the whole principle of it is that people are shown different angles of a completed structure. And they have to verbally explain how to put the pieces together to a person that can't see any picture.
Yeah.
So my view of it might show one side. Your view of it shows a completely different side. So I have to figure out a way to communicate what I'm seeing, and you have to figure out a way to communicate what you're seeing. So the person that's supposed to draw it or put it together, not draw it, put it together, can do it accurately. And it's such a metaphor for we're all looking at the same thing from different angles. And the more angles we can represent, all the data shows that diversity makes for better business decisions. And it's because you're not just seeing one side of the structure, you're seeing all the sides of it.
Yeah. And the important part about that is the communication aspect, right? Because now if you're describing the structure, but you're not using terminology that people that don't come from a perspective of you that's you or a different background as you can understand, then there's no way that you can describe that to somebody in a way that they can actually envision what that looks like.
Yeah.
And so you have to come from a really balanced perspective, a really worldly perspective, global perspective, because not everybody may be as privileged to have the opportunities as you have, or been exposed to the different opportunities that you had too. So you have to really be able to describe it in a way that's more universal. And we all know that globally, right, we are becoming more diverse. We're becoming more culturally exposed, especially here in the US. We're becoming more and more of a melting pot with different people of backgrounds, people of color, sexualities, all sorts of different things. And so even in the science communication realm, that's kind of really the crux when we talk about science communication, which is the work that I do with my STEM outreach, is really being able to take complex science subjects, right? Things that people will consider rocket science and really heavy, hardcore.
Or they think I'm not smart enough to understand what that is. Or I'm not a science person. I got A's in math when I grew up, but I always said I hated math because I didn't really understand it. But that's the label I gave myself. That was the self-talk, was that I'm just not good at math. I'm just not good at math. And when you have children doing that, they're creating those patterns. And then we have so many, women who shy away from STEM fields. We have so many people of color that shy away from STEM fields because they're telling themselves these messages, or like you said, unfortunately, teachers are telling them these messages.
Yeah, teachers are telling them they don't feel empowered. They don't have representation around them that showcases that other people have done this. And that's really important, right? Even myself, I never had teachers that looked like me. I never saw people that were on television that looked like me, that were scientists that were presenting different subject matter, right? I grew up on like Bill Nye, right? Yeah. And a lot of people compare my platform, consider me like the Black Bill Nye.
And you're like, that's great, but he still doesn't look like me.
Yeah, exactly. And that representation is important, right? I've had sessions where I've been working with students, and I've had students message me, and I'm talking early students, like second through like sixth graders, right? And saying, I did a session with an underprivileged school here, local school here in Los Angeles area, and the students were like, "I've never seen a Black scientist before." And to me, that representation is so important, because regardless of whatever situation they may be in, to feel empowered now that somebody that looks like them is in a position doing something that's exciting and fun and engaging, right? And interesting, that goes such a long way in giving them just that mentality that they can do it.
That it's possible. So, it's or not even possible. It's an option. Because I know, not quite the same thing, but as a woman, now they're kind of all over the place. I watch, the science shows and all the educational shows with my son, and there's always a woman scientist, a woman astronomer, a woman, and they're cool, and they dress funky, and they're very eloquent. And I never saw models like that when I was younger. Like, I just didn't think, when I thought of a scientist, the gender that came to mind and the race was a white male. Like, that's just what I always thought. Yep. And so to be able to see that, I'm just so excited for young people watching those different shows and watching your platform, because they're like, even if they decide to go, no, that's not for me. It's number one, they know it's possible. And number two, for all the other kids, they're like, oh, scientists come in all genders. Scientists come in all colors. They come from all ethnicities. They don't just have that one image of a scientist in their mind.
Yep. And there's a big push, there's a big hashtag, what a scientist looks like, right? And changing that face, right? Because we've always been shared those images and shared those videos of scientists that are just old white men in lab coats. And that's what we've always envisioned as what a scientist is. Right. And so, even within my community of science communicators that I do a lot of work with, we have a big push of changing the face of what a scientist looks like, showcasing, we have friends in this space that do tech development and coding, that are models, that modeling, and they are changing the face of, hey, this is what a scientist looks like. Black women in STEM, showcasing, hey, this is changing the face of what a scientist looks like. People that have different backgrounds and different interests as well too, that you can be multi-talented and multifaceted, that you don't even just have to be a science nerd, because that's another thing that students kind of get shocked in, like, oh, I don't want to be considered a nerd, or I don't want to be considered smart.
But isn't it kind of cool to be a science nerd now? I don't know if it's because of the Big Bang Theory, but hasn't that changed a little bit? a little bit. It's kind of like the geek chic type of thing. Yeah.
But a lot of times we still get trapped in that, right? And we want to feel like we're cool. We want to feel like we're accepted. And a lot of times I've seen students that will dumb themselves down in order to try to fit in, because they don't want people to think, oh, he knows too much, or he's too smart, or he asks too many questions. I have a big push. One of the big themes and topics that I speak on when I do keynote presentations and a lot of my STEM outreach work is this much of my tagline is curiosity is nature's PhD. Right. And I talk about how I've been able to navigate my path, right, in doing the STEM education work that I do. Obviously, I have a civil engineering background, but I touch on a lot of topics when I do a lot of my STEM outreach. I touch on everything from space technology to math and physics and biology and wildlife, all these different topics. And I've been able to do all these crazy explorations and these different science trips and different things that I've done with my platform, because of the simple fact that I've asked questions and I've stepped outside the box to do things that may be uncomfortable or out of my wheelhouse, and I think it's so important to showcase that to students, that, hey, even if I to be multi-talented, I can have interest in dance, I can have interest in music and comedy and all these different things, but I can still be knowledgeable as well. And all it takes is asking a question, reaching out to somebody, stepping outside the box that can open up so many doors for not only creativity, but just an advanced appreciation of knowledge and so many different explorations and different things under your belt. And that's how I've been able to navigate so much of the work that I've done, is by staying curious. And I think it goes beyond youth, it goes for adults as well, because as we get older, we get kind of trapped into our work environments, we get complacent, and we feel like, okay, this is what I'm going to do forever, and this is the only thing that's afforded to me. Sometimes it's just that spark of inspiration of seeing somebody else doing something, or empowering yourself to feel, hey, I can do something greater as well too. I'm never too old to explore something new. I'm never too old to try something new. You know, I just recently got scuba certified. I grew up never being able to swim, right? I never knew how to swim. That was always something.
That's that growth mindset, right? That's that. And, you know, we've talked about this a lot on this show, and you may have heard me say it before, but curiosity is the number one trait of empathic people, according to research. And so I think not only is that curiosity good for you in that it helps you find inspiration, it continues to like get those neurons firing. I'm talking to the science guy. I don't know if I'm saying that right.
Yep,
but
absolutely.
you know, that idea of like, we, at a certain age, I did another episode with a great group of two women, Jyoti Patel and Emily Griffin. We did an episode called Let's Play More at Work. And they were talking about research, and I'm going to cite this totally wrong, so don't at me, but it was something about by the age of 19 or 18, or even younger, we've lost like 65% or 75% of our capacity to innovate, like our innate. Like, it doesn't mean that you don't innovate, but like when you're a kid, you're constantly imagining, you're constantly playing, you're engaged in imaginary play. You're like, I'm going to get in a rocket and go to space, and you're figuring out, you're given just a bunch of like Lego bricks and you put them together into something. I watch my son do that all the time. Right.
Yep.
And at some point it gets, you know, beaten out of you, because it's like, no, you have to now conform, you have to do this thing. And as adults, we take that and we've lost sight of that. And so there's so many people out there, including you, talking about, let's play more at work. Let's ignite that natural curiosity that we all have, that we lost that when we grew up.
Yeah, we do. And like you said, it gets beaten out of us, right? A lot, we get jaded by life.
Don't ask. Yeah.
Get jaded by life experiences, and it's unfortunate, you know, and it happens to everybody, right? We've all gone through it. We get to these points where we become too realistic, right? Because now we have to live in this real world. We're adulting, right? And it's finance. We're dealing with expenses. We're dealing with taxes. We're dealing with raising families and jobs and all these different things. So you have all these additional pressures in your life that you didn't have when you were a kid, right? That's like the blessing of being a child, is that you have this youthful ignorance, right? And you don't have to be realistic about what it is that you want to be when you grow up, the things that you want to do, your imagination. But as you get older and all these expectations start, you know, getting crunched upon you, and then you have to be realistic with all these different life decisions and tough choices, we start to lose that creative element. We start to lose our imagination. We start to lose our affinity for just experiencing life. And it's so important as adults to be able to reel that back in, and to have an understanding that, hey, outside the box, I can try new things, I can explore, I can do things that everybody has always told me that would never happen, right? I can get out of this mentality that things are never going to work out, and really just start to hit that switch of like, I'm going to do what it is that I set my mind to, and I'm going to accomplish things regardless of whatever I've been told. And so it's important to really stay curious as we get older, because now we're able to pass that down too. If you end up having children, right, you want to be able to pass that curiosity. You want to be able to empower your kids to be able to think, hey, I can do anything I want to do, no matter what my racial background is, no matter my gender background. I can still feel empowered because I've been given that empowerment by my parents, by seeing them, right? Seeing that representation in them, seeing that passion that they have for what it is that they're doing. I'm now be able to confide in that and be able to take that on as a youth as well too. So it's a full circle thing as well. And we have this really important mentality shift. And so I'm excited to hear that there's groups like doing that, right? Playing at work.
They're doing it everywhere. And I'm just laughing because I'm always doing this, like maybe overkill with my son about trying to expose him to different things. And like, you can be a leader, and like, look at what this is happening. And the other day he like looked at me and said, Mommy, sometimes I just want to be a normal kid. Because I'm like, you're going to do amazing things. You're going to change the world. You're going to save the earth. You're going to like do all these things. I'm like, okay, I'll throttle it back a little bit.
Yeah. But that's great though. Like,
but at least I'm going that way. Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Reach for the stars, right?
Yes.
And then, they can make the decision if they want to, where they want.
If he wants to be an accountant, he can be an accountant. That's totally fine.
Exactly. But don't put any limits, right? Life is limitless.
Exactly.
Life is limitless. And
life is limitless. Thank you, Maynard. Well, I have had so much fun reconnecting with you, and I am such a fan of your work. I follow you all the time on LinkedIn, all the accolades you've gotten, all the awards you've won, all the press. I love it. And you are proof about the fact that you created that. You mentioned, what was the quote you said earlier? When you find your passion,
it becomes your purpose, and you can no longer be passive.
Love it. You are living that. You are in the embodiment of that, and you are representing that for all of us. So whether you intentionally meant to be empathetic or not, it has made you successful, and we love it. We're here for it. How can folks find out more about you? Where can they go? We'll have all your links in the show notes, but where's the best place that they can find out more about you and your work?
Yeah. They can reach out directly to me at my website, hiphopscienceshow.com. I have a lot of my content there. I have a lot of different ways that we can collaborate because, like I mentioned, I do a lot of work in STEM education with K through 12, young working professionals, college students, corporations, different brands as well. And you highlighted something that's so important, right? Because a lot of times we don't, empathy may not be at the forefront of what these decisions that we're making, but even just having this conversation with you, I'm realizing that at the core of everything that I've done is from an empathetic position, right? When we talk about diversity and inclusion and representation,
and
right?
Curiosity,
we are naturally empathetic people as humans, right? And I think if we're able to touch base with that more often and understand that empathy is at the core of everything that we do that's going to be able to change humanity, that's so important, goes a long way and be able to support the next generation as well. So I appreciate you reiterating that in me today.
I love it. Thank you so much, Maynard, for being on the show today. And thank you everyone for listening and tuning in once again. Please share this great episode with friends or colleagues and join us next time for another great episode of The Empathy Edge. Always remember, cash flow, creativity, and compassion are not mutually exclusive. Take care and be kind.